Hello and welcome to the Worn and Wound podcast. My name is Blake Bettner, and we are in our impromptu studio in our office. Zach Kazan, you are joining us. Welcome, welcome to New York, and welcome to the podcast.
Great, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Why are you in town right now, Zach?
I'm in town for the Fairer event that we had last night. Today's Friday, we had an event at the Filson flagship store on Broadway last night with Fairer and. Lots of cocktails and lots of lots of great Filson gear and
watches plenty.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. We had a great turnout too. A lot of really familiar faces, some new faces. Really cool watches showed up. Got a chance to kind of nerd out over a few of them.
Absolutely.
Which was a lot of fun. Thank you if you made it out to the event. If not, hopefully we will catch you at the next one. We will have some kind of photo report coming of that pretty soon, so keep an eye out for that. It was great to see Paul. I know a lot of people were disappointed that he wasn't at the Wind-Up Watch Fair.
He tried.
He wanted to be there very much. Rules and regulations as they were wasn't in the cards that time. So we're happy that we were able to do something with him. And Filson was gracious enough to host. Did you buy any Filson clothes?
I didn't buy any Filson clothes. I love Filson. I have a great Filson briefcase bag type thing that I've had for years that I absolutely love. They make great stuff.
Yeah,
big Filson fan.
Well, that's the problem when you get a real high quality brand. You don't need to buy.
You don't need to keep
more
replacing it. That thing will last me for the rest of my life. If I wanted to. Yeah.
Kind of like watches.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, at least that's the idea, ideally. Right? Yeah. But here we are, hasn't really slowed us down, has it?
I mean, for some of us, it slowed down less than others.
Yeah, that's true. But in principle, theoretically, we just get one of these and we're good for life.
What would that be like, I wonder?
Yeah, well, maybe we should. Hey, tomorrow, as this airs, will be Thanksgiving.
That's right.
We should be thankful for the watches that we have, and just make do with what we have.
Yeah.
That's what we tell people that ask us, at least. These are things that you should think about in the context of wearing for a lifetime, right?
Sure, yeah. Do you have a special watch that you'll wear for Thanksgiving?
Oh, boy.
It's kind of a family-focused holiday, a special occasion. Do you put on a special watch?
Yeah, I try to. I have a funny story, actually, about a watch that I wore on Thanksgiving that I will get into. First, let's do a quick wrist check.
Sure.
I always forget this. And if you're wondering why we're in an office, I could not get the studio booked in time. So here we are. Sorry, Josh. We will be back next week. Probably the week after. We'll probably take a week off for Thanksgiving if that's allowed.
I support that.
Yeah, we'll see. What are you wearing, Zach?
Today I'm wearing, it's a vintage watch. It's Zenith Port Royal. This is a watch that I post sometimes on Instagram. I don't wear it too often, but I did bring it with me on this trip to the city. It's has an oval shaped case, very unusual. Blake Mallon hates this watch. He told me he hates it. Strong words. But it's
from a docile man.
Yeah.
So this I love this case because it looks like, to me, it reminds me, if you use Photoshop and you go to resize something, and you don't hold Shift.
Right.
It doesn't keep the proportions of it, so it's like you go to resize it and you accidentally miss that Shift key, and then it squishes the whole thing.
This watch is
it looks like the result
error,
of that, but in real life, it almost breaks your eyes looking at it. But that's what makes it awesome.
It's kind of a unique, interesting watch. I've never seen another one of these out in the wild.
Did you say it was a high frequency watch as well?
Yeah, high frequency automatic movement. So.
Just looking at the second sands there, I can't decipher any. Very cool. I like that. I am wearing a Group B, an Autodromo. Group B, this is the Night Stage 3 dial. So this is the kind of reddish, pinkish with the grid on the dial. I love these watches. I've got the Night Stage 2 as well. Loads of personality. I've got a real soft spot for the Group B, as I think I have mentioned once or twice on the podcast before. But they're fun watches to wear, super easy watches to wear as well. So that is what I have on my wrist. Thanksgiving. My wife's family every year does Thanksgiving at their farm that has been in their family for generations. So I go naturally with them. We take our son down there and spend the weekend in the woods and bonfires and all that kind of business. I've been doing the whole watch coverage thing for a long time, so sometimes I have weird watches that I'm just reviewing that I take with me on whatever I'm doing, so Thanksgiving included. One year I remember I had on a watch, do you remember this? The Devon Tread.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, that's a crazy watch. Yeah.
It was crazy, ridiculous. I was doing a week on the wrist with it for Hodinkee, and I just happened to have it over the Thanksgiving period. So you can imagine this rural Kentucky setting, farmhouse, outhouses. They only just got running water and all this not too long ago, and I've got this, frankly, kind of ridiculous watch on my wrist. So I felt I had some explaining to do to some in-laws that weekend about what exactly it was.
Did that experience make it into the Week on the Wrist review?
I was probably
Did you talk about bringing the Devon Tread into the outhouse?
I was probably too bashful to talk about that kind of a thing way back then. This was kind of earlier on. Boy, that's not a watch I've thought about in a long time, but the Thanksgiving thing, that always kind of like brings it right back up there.
Yeah, I bet.
And what a strange watch, too. Do you remember this watch? What did you think?
Sure,
do you remember seeing this watch?
It had kind of like a, like the tread referred to the, like the way that the numerals were set up was like a tire track. It would like it worked on like a
or like a treadmill that you would run on, like a belt that would rotate in and out. So the numbers were on different series of belts.
Yeah.
It had this like whole clear, huge kind of bulbousy case. It was like electronic mechanism.
Yeah, it's kind of avant-garde in a similar way to like like an Urwerk or MB&F, kind of a similar sort of. Like just a crazy, like incredibly creative design.
Yeah, it really was, and what a fun experience. I usually go on vacations, especially with the in-laws, with something far more conservative that doesn't really call attention to itself. But I've been married for longer than 10 years, so I think they all know what my
it's well understood at this
what my
point,
deal is. Well, I don't know if it's understood, but tolerated.
Yeah.
We'll call it. Yeah. What about you? Are you traveling at all for Thanksgiving?
Yeah. So my sister and brother-in-law are hosting Thanksgiving this year in New Jersey. So I'll be on the road back into this area again next week. So I'm not sure what watch I'm going to wear. I'm only going there for a couple of days, so I probably won't bring a bunch of watches. I'll probably just wear my Grand Seiko like I normally do most days.
Is that the only watch you're going to take?
Yeah, I don't really travel with a bunch of watches, particularly for a short trip.
Is there a threshold like, well, if I'm gone for more than 5 days, then I'll put the roll in the bag and load
Honestly,
up on...
the way my brain works, if I'm going to be gone longer, I'm less likely to bring a bunch of watches because I figure I'm more likely to lose something over a longer period of time that I'm traveling. So yeah, like I just don't... I never really feel a desire to bring like, a roll full of watches. I might bring like 2 or 3. Like certainly when I'm, here for work and in the office, I like to bring, a handful of watches to switch around because it's kind of, it's part of the culture of this place. We all have a bunch of watches to switch.
But you're not throwing the whole watch box in your bag.
No, I don't have like a set number of watches that I travel with. I like to just keep it as simple as possible when I'm on the road.
Yeah, I feel that. I feel like early on I used to take 4 or 5 watches places, just thinking, what if I want to wear this? What if I want to have that? But then you usually end up just wearing the one or something, and then you kind of realize like, okay, I don't need to be traveling with all these watches.
And most of my watches are kind of like appropriate for any situation I'm going to find myself in.
Yeah.
Anyway, when I'm traveling, for work or on vacation or whatever.
Like the Devon Tread.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it really. A nice dinner in a fancy restaurant.
Devon Tread.
Swimming in the ocean, whatever. Yeah, that's great.
So you mentioned your Grand Seiko there. Do you have a watch? Do you have any watches incoming that you're ready to talk about?
I might have something incoming. In December.
All right.
A certain Grand Seiko, perhaps.
Okay.
We'll see. It'll be mentioned on the podcast if it materializes. So
we'll see what happens there. I'm excited to see whatever that might be, though, in the flesh.
Same.
So we have this has turned into a pretty busy week of releases. Just today, as we record this, we had a watch revealed from Aquastar. This was what is it? The Depth Star, Depth Master.
It's the Deep Star.
The Deep Star.
Deep Star 2,
Deep
I believe,
Star
is
2.
what it's called.
Yeah. So this is a take on an earlier chronograph that we'd seen from Aquastar. That was the first watch in the resurgence of this brand, I guess. So this one takes a lot of that same design language and puts it into a time and date. Is there a date on there? Is it date?
No date.
It's just a three-hander.
No date. So they took the date wheel out.
Okay,
It's a Sellita movement with a date. Typically, and they moved it, so yeah, clean, no date design.
Love it. Yeah, so and it's a 37 millimeter in diameter, I think 47 or so lug to lug.
Yep.
Boy, what a lovely little watch this
Yeah.
is, though. Today, you wrote this one up for us. What was your impression when you first saw it? We've got it in the office here. Did it change, kind of seeing it in the flesh?
I really like this watch a lot. It's a great size. The 37 millimeter case size is a little bit deceiving. It's because it's so long. The 47 millimeters is a pretty standard lug to lug measurement for a modern dive watch. So, it wears more like a 39 or 40 millimeter watch, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Super comfortable. Really nice beads of rice bracelet. Interesting, kind of vintage inspired aesthetic. It's not based on any specific watch, but like you said, very much draws on that Aquastar, heritage, and shares a lot in common with the last year's Aquastar chronograph.
Yeah.
The Deep Star chronograph, which was quite a bit bigger, and I haven't tried that watch on, but my understanding is it wore quite a bit larger than its 40 millimeter case size would suggest.
Yeah, I got some brief hands-on time with it, and that was certainly my impression. But quite a looker, though.
Yeah.
A really interesting looking watch. Obviously, that's a design language that goes back to their heyday. And props to Rick Marai for bringing this back. This three-hander wasn't based on any particular watch, as I understand it, although they had made a time-only watch in the past. But this brought the kind of chronograph design language to it with the kind of oversized sub-second dial placed at 9 o'clock, which is, it adds a lot of character to this watch. And then they've got the kind of scripted typeface over to the right. And then those strange hour markers.
Yeah.
Where I commented before, it feels like there's kind of a formality to this watch and not like an overt, chunky dive watch kind of element to this. It's really got its own personality to it, which I really like.
Yeah, no, very much so. It doesn't really look like any other watch that I can think of. It has like almost an ornate kind of quality to it with the polished elements and those cardinal hour markers on the dial at 12, 3, and 6 are actually like double markers with a strip of loom between them. It's very nicely done. It's a cool, unique dive watch.
Yeah, it is. I took the bracelet off of it and put a NATO on it. Because of course, and I thought it really came to life on that strap. I like it quite a bit. Are you a beads of rice guy? Would you wear a watch?
Yeah, I'd wear it on a beads of rice bracelet. Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Very comfortable.
And I think it's also offered on a Tropic strap, which we did not have in the office. Though we'll see what those are like in person, and maybe we'll do kind of something more in depth when we get one of those. We might have a couple personal models hanging around the office relatively soon here. We'll see what happens there. So that was the Aquastar. We've got that live up on the site right now. Another one that released this week, we had a new collection of watches from Breitling. I was down in Dallas for the release of these new Super Avi watches. Super Avi. It doesn't naturally come off the tongue for me, but I know it's a historic reference for them. Obviously, they have brought this kind of core design back a few times over the generations, and then this is a new collection of I believe 5 models, and 4 of them. It's kind of based on these 4 specific American warplanes. Each of the dial kind of colorways. It's the same core watch though. It's a chronograph with a GMT hand. It is unabashedly Breitling watch. It is 46 millimeters in diameter.
Yeah, that's
about 16 millimeters thick.
It's big.
Yeah, it's a lot. So at the event, they had the pilots and caretakers of these old American warplanes, which are all still like usable, and they fly them to shows and exhibitions and things like that throughout the year. All lovely guys, and all have wore the corresponding Breitling to their plane. Looked fine on them, I would say. And these are kind of like hardened pilot dudes, and they kind of showed how they wore it on the underside of their wrists. And these are all old planes, so they don't have the touch screens and gadgets and gizmos and stuff that I assume new planes probably have. So they kind of talked about how they use it and what they use it for, and they were guests of Breitling, so typically, of course, they use it for something.
Sure.
But it didn't look so ridiculous on them. I put it on my wrist, and it looked. It was a lot. It was a lot for me.
Did you get to try on the jumpsuit too?
I did not get a
the
jumpsuit.
would have helped the context of the watch a little bit.
I did get a pilot's jacket though.
Well, that's cool.
It says Breitling on the back, and my son really likes it.
That's good swag.
It's good swag. Yeah, he randomly asked me the other day for a leather jacket for Christmas. I have no idea where he got that from or where maybe he's. You know what? I showed him the.
Has he been reading old Breitling catalogs? Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. I did show him the preview of the upcoming, I guess, Top Gun movie, Maverick.
Okay.
I feel like that's been coming for.
It's been
years.
delayed a few times,
No.
but I think early 2022 it's finally.
Maybe that's where he
coming.
picked it up. The whole pilot, because he thought that was pretty cool.
Agreed. It was pretty cool. I'm excited for that movie.
But anyways, about these watches, like I will say this, and I think this, and I think I've said this on the podcast before. I think they're perfectly handsome watches, and when you see pictures of them, they're really sharp, and I think a lot of Breitling watches are really sharp, and for my wrist, didn't quite translate in the ergonomic way that I would have liked. But that's just me. I'm sure a lot of people will be able to wear these, and good for them. And it's a nice looking watch, and certainly mechanically impressive, and all that kind of stuff. So thank you to Breitling for having us out there. I think they will have their next summits early next year. So maybe a new aerospace or something exciting from them will come out of that. So.
And you saw an aerospace worn by a pilot there, right?
Yes, I did randomly. So where we were at, National Aircraft Education Center, something like this, down in Dallas. Really cool facilities down there. They had some other pilots there, and one of them, came out wearing this, and it was just awesome. We all kind of honed in on it, like whoa, because it was beat up and it was titanium, and he's like, it's been on countless, I don't say missions, but flights and whatever they call what they do. I hope that's not disrespectful. I don't know. Flying assignments.
Sure.
Maybe. Yeah. But boy, if that one could tell some stories, I think he would have a lot to say. He said it'd been with him for decades, and it looked every bit of it.
Yeah. It's so interesting that is like the aerospace is a watch that obviously like actual working pilots wear and use. It is in every sense of the word a pilot's watch, but it's so different than in terms of its aesthetic and how it wears than this new Breitling and what we often think of as what a pilot's watch should look like. It really kind of speaks to the breadth of watches in that category.
Yeah, it was a striking contrast.
Yeah.
Between the watches that had just been released. And then seeing this guy who was not a part of the Breitling contingency just kind of wander over and had this on, and it really brought into clear focus, but it was still a Breitling, and it still kind of spoke to that really cool authenticity.
A good photo opportunity would have been the new 46 millimeter gold version of that watch with the I think it's a 40 millimeter aerospace and titanium.
And it's paper thin. It's
super
awesome.
super lightweight, easy to wear. Yeah. That would have been a cool thing to see side by side.
There is a picture in the gallery. It's kind of out of focus, but you can see the other pilot that has the new one, and then this guy that has the aerospace. But what a cool watch to see in person, especially on the wrist of a guy like that. Very cool stuff. All right, so let's see here. Another watch that I wanted to talk about was a new watch from Zenith. that I think we were both pretty fond of when we saw it. This is a collaboration between SJX and Zenith. This was let's call it a reinterpretation of a model called the Poker Chip. So the Chronomaster Revival. You wrote this up. Tell us a little bit more about it.
So as you said, it's a very much a reinterpretation and not a direct remake of a watch that's kind of obscure in the Zenith archives. It's the reference G383. We have a photo of it in the article that we'll link to. And it's called the Poker Chip because the subdials have these line patterns on them that kind of resemble the sort of design you would see on a poker chip. And the vintage watch also has kind of an interesting case shape with kind of like short, fancy lugs. It's it's interesting. It's a little dated. Some of those Zenith designs are, including the one I'm wearing currently. So matter of personal preference as to what you like there. But they Zenith and SJX ported this one over into the modern. Into a modern Zenith case, and they did it in their in their titanium material for the first time in this case style, and they updated the dial with a ton of lume. It's basically a black dial with these like very vibrant lume highlights now, and it also comes on a lumed strap. If you didn't have enough lume on the dial, the strap also glows in the dark, so that's pretty fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. I guess they're kind of like sections of the subdials that they're kind of cut into, and they kind of recreate these funky patterns within them. So I'm guessing all of that glows as well, right?
I think so. Yeah, all the the patterns and the subdials that's lume, so that glows, and then the markers glow, and I think the scales also are loomed. So it's a big lume machine. This one.
Yeah, this watch is a trip. And you can see it kind of capture the essence or whatever of the original, but completely different. Execution, obviously, with the black case, and this is a great case. We've talked about this case plenty of times on the site, and it's got the El Primero 400 in it. So this does time down to the 10th of a second.
This is their. This isn't the new super high frequency one. No, this is the previous generation El Primero movement, and that's one of the reasons, according to the
5 hertz.
So on the article introducing it on SJX, they explain that they chose this movement specifically. They could have chosen the new, the ultra high frequency movement, the Caliber 400, but they decided against it because eventually they're all going to be that potentially. And so they kind of wanted to tie this one mechanically to the original G383 poker chip from the 70s.
Yeah, that's understandable. This one was 9 or 10 grand, and I think limited to 200 examples. Boy, great looking watch though. It's gnarly in all the best ways.
It's very cool. It's a fun watch. A lot of these, some of these Zenith, limited editions are a little bit hit and miss. Like it just really depends on whether it kind of grabs your particular, sense of taste. But I really enjoy this one quite a bit. It's fun.
Would you wear it on that lume strap if you had it?
100%.
100%.
Yes. Absolutely.
Embrace it. You just got to own it, right?
Yeah.
If you're gonna have
we were talking about this in the office. I think that like a Velcro strap would be cool on this.
Yeah.
More Velcro straps, please. That'd be super fun. This watch is screaming out for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I like the idea of those kinds of straps. I know I've been looking for.
And not Velcro, I should say. Velcro's a trademark. Don't sue us.
Self-adhering.
Yeah. Self-adhering. Yes, hook and loop, whatever.
Hook and as we learned from the Tudor post there. Which has that grown on you at all?
I think it's grown about as much as it's going to until I maybe see one in the metal. It's I think it's a perfectly fine nice looking dive watch. Probably not for me specifically, but I am looking forward to seeing one in person eventually.
Yeah.
Once they're more widely available, and all the reports from people who've already got them. I follow a few folks on Instagram who have them. Everyone seems to be raving about it in terms of its wearability. It seems to be significantly thinner, like in a real world situation. Obviously, it measures about 2 millimeters thinner, but really wears like it too apparently. So that's a good sign.
Yeah, I'm curious to get my hands on this. I was going back and forth with someone from Tudor today, and we should have one within the coming week and a half here. So we'll have a lot more to say on that coming soon. But yeah, I'm curious about that because I've seen a lot of the same reactions and feedback on it. Like, where is that 52 measurement taken from? And I don't know. There's something I feel like that's not being accounted for in just those numbers. As we say often around here, I feel like it's easy to get caught up in those kind of like particular measurements, but that's not the whole story all the time. So
I would also like to see this watch on. You could potentially put it on a leather strap, like an old style leather strap with a buckle that kind of loops around a fixed lug bar. Like that's certainly possible, and you can have those custom made. I wonder if anyone who owns this watch will do that, but I bet then it would wear even thinner because you wouldn't have that fabric running underneath the case. So I bet it would look cool.
I'm sure it would. But so I think this is one of those kind of unique watches that Tudor just kind of does sometimes that people seem to be all over the map on. But I think much more staying power than something like the P01.
Yeah, well, it kind of seemed to me like almost like a cousin of the P01. Like it's a strange, very niche watch. Although this one I think definitely seems to have a wider appeal, at least initially, than the P01, based on kind of what
talk about
lug
to lug measurements. That P01.
I
think, it's different zip codes. On,
it's a wide span.
But boy, what a peculiar watch that was. I've never gotten my hands on one of those to see.
I have. They're cool.
Are they? Have you had one on your wrist? Is it really, like not that bad? Does it?
No, it's big. Like it wears big, but it's like it seems like it's supposed to.
Yeah.
So I mean, I have a big wrist. I feel like I can pull it off, but definitely a watch you want to try on before you place your order for sure. But like all Tudors, it's well made. It's nice looking in person, but yeah, it's strange. You have to kind of like embrace the weirdness of it, I think.
Yeah, which we're pretty good at doing. You're pretty good at doing. I think you've got a Port Royal on your wrist right now.
I do. Yeah. I'm not afraid of the weird stuff.
Yeah, and that's good. These are only watches. We're not saving lives here, and I think we have the time on our phones and computers in front of us all the time. So
pretty much, all the time.
I think we have to take a step back every once in a while and kind of remind ourselves that we don't need these things. This is something that we should have some fun with every now and then, and your watch box should reflect that.
Absolutely.
So if there's any justification for having more than just a single watch that you wear every day, maybe it's if you're, I guess, an enthusiast. I don't know. I know a lot of people probably just have like the one watch type thing, but if you really enjoy it, I'd say it's worth having something that's like, kind of pushes that a little bit, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, you have to. I mean, whatever allows you to enjoy it. Whether it doesn't have to be like a weird, funky design.
It doesn't have to be a Zenith poker chip.
Yeah.
Or Port Royal.
There are a lot of ways you can. I imagine you can kind of like get that satisfaction from a watch if it's more than just just like a simple time telling tool. But I think it's important to kind of experiment and be open minded and be able to say like, maybe I'll try on the P01 or the Pelagos FXD or the Zenith Port Royal and just kind of see how it wears and see how it makes me feel.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said about pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone a little bit. I think you learn a little bit more about you. You kind of, we talked the other week about kind of finding your lane, and every time you do that, you push yourself outside of your comfort zone. You find maybe an edge or a corner of that lane, and maybe it budges, maybe it doesn't, maybe it takes a turn. I don't know, but I think those are good areas to explore. So you're not on a narrow path. This can be a wide thing.
Yeah, I can't imagine like the hobby is so much more fulfilling if you're open to things and to experiencing different things. If you have like a set list of parameters that you're looking for and just never deviate from, then collecting watches or even just thinking about watches becomes an exercise, and just like looking at specs and seeing like what does this watch have exactly what I'm looking for? No. On to the next one, because very few watches, when it comes right down to it, will meet every single one of your needs. So it's best to just kind of, in my opinion, like I said, be open-minded, be open to experiencing different kinds of things.
Yeah. So as open as you and me might be with some of this kind of stuff, we have a line somewhere.
Yeah.
And what's a deal breaker, right? Do you have any deal breakers when it comes to these things? And do you? I know it's easy to get bogged down in some of the numbers and things like this, but maybe there is like a one thing that's like you have in the back of your head of, oh, I hope it doesn't have this or that, or it's not like this, or something that you just discover in your experience of the watches.
Yeah.
That's a bridge too far. So
I've been thinking about this because at the event last night, the Ferrer event at the Filson store, I had a conversation with a listener of the podcast named Andreas. So shout out to Andreas, who said he's a listener of the podcast and wanted us to talk about deal breakers and things that things that might present that sort of like fundamental, like I can't get past this sort of idea, and to kind of engage with that. So I have been thinking about that a little bit, and for me, what it always comes down to is just like the wearing experience and the comfort on your wrist. Like I'll wear almost anything if it feels good and if I enjoy wearing it, and so it's just a size thing. Like if I see a watch that has measurements above, say, like 44 millimeters. Like I have a big wrist, I have a 7.5-inch wrist, so I can like pull off a larger watch. But like that, in my experience, is about where it starts to get like a little just too cumbersome for me personally. Which isn't to say that there are watches that are that size that wear smaller or are comfortable because of the material that they're made of, or the the lug design or whatever. But that's sort of a barrier that I have in my own head. I tend not to like really take seriously, at least for myself, watches that are above around that.
44 is
that
a ceiling.
Like in my experience, it's just been kind of like anything at or above that level, which is a big watch by most standards, is just kind of like too much for me personally.
Yeah. Any particular watches come to mind that?
I mean, Panerais that I've tried on, just like they, I sometimes will look at a Panerai and think, I like aesthetically like the way that looks, and then I'll try it on and it'll just kind of like, it just doesn't really feel right or look right, in my opinion, on my wrist. But some people love that about Panerais. So it's all just so subjective. Yeah.
And the 24 millimeter lug span on a lot of those, that gets into pushing it territory for me. And
it just makes the watch have such a wider stance, like just beyond the we love switching up straps, obviously, and it makes it more difficult. Unless you're deep into the Panerai ecosystem, obviously that's part of the culture. But just creates this like incredibly wide footprint on the wrist, which you either
some people love that.
Yeah, exactly. Some people really love it. For me, it's never really held too much of an appeal.
Yeah, I like to have the kind of free wrist movement.
Yeah.
I've noticed sometimes maybe I talk too much with my hands, especially
while gesticulating.
I can't have that impeded when I'm talking to people. No, I mean, I do things beyond just sitting in front of a computer, and I like to feel like I don't have to take my watch off if I want to do something. So if I come across a watch that I'm wearing for review or that I own or whatever, that my first inclination when I'm going to do something else is to take it off, then I know I've got a problem with it. And it's not something that I notice right away, but eventually I do. And I'll, especially if I consistently do it, like, oh, I'm going to go do that or this, and I better take my watch off so I can do it, or put it in my pocket to play catch with my son or something like that. Then that becomes a problem.
So how does that manifest itself with like non-sports watches, vintage watches, or like what kind of watch do you find yourself thinking?
I mean, I have most of my watches. I would say are sporty, like in that realm, and so it really comes down to like like the clasp or the flexibility of like where the end link meets.
So it's
the
like a
case.
very physical thing.
It's a physical, and it's not something that I don't like. You just notice as you're doing it, like, oh, I'm unable to do this while I have this on, so I'm going to take it off and put it in my pocket. That's when I know I got maybe a problem. But if I was wearing like a Patek Calatrava or something, I wouldn't have that expectation of it, and I probably wouldn't be putting it in the situation anyways. But of the watches that I own, I wouldn't like actively go out of my way to like not wear one of them for pretty much anything that I do in my life, and I like that flexibility. I like thinking that. Like I like all the watches that are in my watch boxes are could be called up at any time. I could wear them like at any time, and none of them are going to feel like terribly out of place, like no matter what I'm going to do. I like that.
I mean, I've had vintage. Like I love vintage watches. I kind of like cut my teeth on vintage watches, and I don't own as many vintage watches now as I used to, and I probably won't buy as many in the future as I maybe would have. But I find myself sometimes when I'm wearing a vintage watch, like I'll take it off if I'm going to like do the dishes or wash my hands, or like just like because I worry. Like I do have that worry about like moisture in a vintage watch. Even if I've had it tested, it's just something I'm concerned with, and that is kind of a bummer when you when you have to like kind of manage your watch wearing like in that way.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. But that's so practical elements there. I think are important, and I think those are kind of like the top of the list, for us. Again, keeping in mind that, these are just watches. We don't have to be wearing them at any point. It's not like it takes away from my life at all. If I have to take my watch off and do something, I'm not losing sleep over it.
Right.
It does. It just makes me rethink, like, do I like really want that watch long term if I'm not going to do like X, Y, Z type of things in it. But when it comes down to like individual components on a watch, I feel like it's like small things that I'll start to notice. One of them for me, and this might be the reason that I don't have a Grand Seiko in my collection today, are like framed date windows.
Interesting.
On modern watches, like there's vintage watches that I don't mind it so much, but like when I see it on a modern watch, it always takes me back to like specific like Seiko sport watches from like the 70s or something, and that's all I think about when I see them. So like on Grand Seikos, whatever, I see this like kind of chrome frame date window. That's where my head goes. I know it's not like cheap or poorly done or anything.
I was going to say, like, look at the frame under a loop, and like
it's really nice.
Your mind might
sure.
change.
It's just purely like an aesthetic thing of that frame date window. I don't know. Like I would probably just rather like not have a date window there. But then I think, what is a perfectly executed date window? Like, is there a step there? Is there a chamfer around the date? I don't know. Like, I don't have a formula for this is how you do a date window like perfectly. But when it's got like a big frame around it, and a part of it makes me feel. Do you remember like I don't know if you had like in high school or college kids that would like gussy up their cars.
Oh yeah.
With customizations, and they would get that like chrome stuff and put it around like. Where the door would open, and you'd put that chrome like stripping along the edge of the door and like all the doors, and then like the gas thing, like it's got a little bit of that feel to me.
You're trying to ruin Grand Seiko for me, and it's not. You're not going to be successful here.
No, I'm not trying to ruin it for anybody. This is just like the weird things that I have in my head that when I see these things that it kind of like brings to mind. I'm sure Zach Weiss is over there like. Giving me the eye through these things, but no, like I'm all due respect. I'm sure they're done like really beautifully. It's just like an aesthetic thing, and that's kind of what comes to my head. And so, I don't know, I'm crazy.
We all have a deal breaker. It's unavoidable. There's things that no matter how open-minded we are, there are things probably that all of us just can't get past. I think that's okay. There's a lot of watches out there to choose from. So,
you know what? Like a date at all, a date at 4:30, a date at 6. I'm not like offended by any of that. It's really just like how it's done. Like I don't know. And that's you're right. It's a preference. It's a preference thing. What about you? Is there any like individual design feature that comes to mind, like that kind of takes you into a place that you don't want to be? That's like personal to you.
So like, it's hard to think of something like really specific because I really do try to be open-minded. Something that I'm not a huge fan of is like a very large logo.
Yeah.
Like I don't actually mind text on a dial.
Yeah.
But like a large, like some brands have, I won't name any, but like I'm thinking of some, in my head right now have logos that like are just like huge, and like out of proportion with like the rest of the text on the dial.
Yeah.
So yeah, not a huge fan of that.
Yeah, I totally feel it. And as soon as you said that, like immediately examples started popping in my head. And that's another one. It's a silly thing. It's like, it's the logo. But it comes down to that, this is the visual thing that I'm going to click with every time I see it.
Yeah.
And that's like becomes a focal point, like whether you want it to be or not on the dial. So yeah, I can buy that. That could be a breaking point. But that's not like a carte blanche. That's just the, like this example or that example.
I mean, now I'm even thinking of watches with like larger logos that I like, and so it's like that's not even like a really good deal breaker. It's just something that's just like it's an aesthetic thing that is not my favorite. But if there are other things about the watch that speak to me, it's something I could certainly get past.
Yeah. One thing that I've had people say a lot to me is like when you have applied numerals around the dial, and there's anything else on the dial, how those numerals are cut off and represented, or not cut off, or just like how there's like an area of tension that has to be resolved there. And I feel like there's good ways to do it and bad ways to do it, but I see that this like really gets under the skin of some people when certain digits are cut off in certain ways, especially when it's an applied, so it becomes like a vestige of.
Yeah, that's something that actually has never really bothered me because I feel like that's like a historic part of like watch dial design. It's like cutting off numerals, and I feel like the vitriol directed at those designs is really kind of. It's like a new thing, it started like in watch enthusiasm. If someone correct me if I'm wrong, but it wasn't something that people were getting bent out of shape about in the 1940s, for example, when you had these multi-scale chronographs with scales cutting into numerals and sub-dials cutting into numerals.
And it's all just thrown on there.
Yeah, like those designs are still much loved. People weren't I don't think people were too upset about that in the 1940s or 50s. So.
That chronoscope comes to mind from Omega.
That's what I was thinking of. Yeah,
it's a lot on that dial, but like when you take a step back and experience it as a whole, like it's kind of neat. And then when you kind of zoom in on certain features, it's interesting for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, who knows? Maybe people would gather at the pubs back then and complain about how that stupid scale overlaps the
I would like
6
to think
and the
that
subdial.
In the midst of World War II, I hope there were things that people were more
I hope
more concerned with than
so.
whether the the subdials were cutting into a numeral or not.
Yeah, there was some like Larry David type though that was like, on this field watch I can't. How am I supposed to? Another one is like hour hands that are like kind of thick that overlap the like recording registers of chronograph. So like if you're using it at a certain time, it kind of overlaps the data that you're trying to record.
Yep.
Thus rendering it.
If you use your chronograph and need to use your chronograph, I can imagine that would be a difficult thing to deal with. But as I've talked about on the podcast, I just use my chronograph to make sure that the watch is still
working.
It's still working.
Okay. And when you want to like something to play with.
Yeah.
Okay. Sure. So you're saying screw down pushers, not a deal breaker.
No, because I just leave them unscrewed.
You just leave them unscrewed?
I would just leave them unscrewed, just like kind of like super casual. Like my pushers are unscrewed.
Okay.
Why not?
OCD types right now listening are
come at me.
Screaming
I'm
into
ready.
the Yeah, no, I think that there's a lot of little things like that you will, and it's weird because I think you can take a watch at face value and find something that you really enjoy, but if you choose to like really hone in on something that bothers you and you choose to let it keep getting to you like day after day, then it's going to kind of take over your. Oh, that's all I think about when I look at this watch is that, this Group B, for instance. I know a lot of people have an issue with the counter balance of the minute hand. Extends beyond the hand stack, like where they all attach. So it almost looks like an hour, like a second hour hand, and the hour hand looks like it could be like a GMT hand or something like that. But I don't mind. I understand that about it, and I don't know how to read it. But for some people, it like really bothers them. And I think if you hone in on that, and then you're just going to focus on that, it's going to ruin your experience of the watch. So maybe that's another chance to kind of remind yourself, it's just a watch.
Right.
Let's not take it too seriously. It's the same with probably a lot of text on the dial, which doesn't really bother me all that much. I know it doesn't bother you.
I like to
all
read,
that much.
so yeah.
You like to read? There you go.
Show me the text.
Yeah. If you're bored on a plane or something,
Yeah.
I guess so. Yeah. give this a gander.
A lover of literature of all kinds.
Yeah. There you go. What are deal breakers to you? Let us know. Maybe I'm sure there's a million things that we're missing that
we'll hear about them. I'm sure.
And we'll hear about them. Let us know. We can respond to them in a future episode, or maybe we can do even a little editorial about these little things, and how we approach them, and maybe give you some ideas on how you can approach them too. Again, we're not saving lives here. These are just watches, so don't take it too seriously. But yeah, we would love to hear from you. So please leave a comment down below, or if you're listening to this, just shoot us an email.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for listening. Have a wonderful holiday weekend, and we look forward to seeing you when we come back from break. Until next time.